Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie, and today I want to share with you a rather intriguing story about my mother-in-law, Sarah. Currently, Sarah doesn't have much say in our lives because we've chosen to sever ties with her. Reaching this point of no contact wasn't easy at all. Sarah is the epitome of narcissism. I'm not an expert in psychology, but she exhibits every classic sign of a narcissistic personality. Describing her in the harshest of terms, Sarah is self-centered and utterly vile, only ever concerned with her own needs. Interestingly, her son, my husband Paul, is the polar opposite. I believe this is largely due to him being raised mostly by his father after his parents divorced early in his childhood. Sadly, he only reunited with Sarah following his father's death from a terminal illness. From the stories Paul has shared, it's clear that Sarah is overly controlling and manipulative. Paul once confided in me, "Jamie, my mom demands so much from me. She feels entitled to everything I own and expects me to care for her indefinitely." He told me about how she used to take his entire salary when he started working during his school years. For the longest time, Paul believed this level of parental control was normal, but that's not healthy. I told him, "You were essentially enslaved, working while she did nothing but lounge around in her apartment. You must make some serious financial changes." "I know, Jamie," he replied. "I've tried talking to her, but she always guilt-trips me about abandoning her or leaving her to fend for herself. I even suggested she get a job, but she refuses to listen." Paul struggled to manage his student loans since he was financially supporting Sarah throughout college. She stopped working when Paul was 17, the same year he got his first job. From that moment, he was designated as the family's primary breadwinner, isolated from their extended family and under Sarah's stringent control. He had always considered this dynamic to be normal. He didn't have friends because Sarah didn't allow it, and he couldn't afford a phone. When Paul went to college, he was introduced to a whole new world. Despite Sarah's attempts to prevent him from attending higher education were relentless. It was there, away from his mother's overwhelming influence and meeting a variety of people, that he finally realized the abnormality of his upbringing. Paul had always financially supported Sarah, his mother, despite her manipulative ways. 3 years into our relationship, I felt compelled to address the situation. "Paul, your mother has been quite abusive towards you," I told him. "She's manipulated you for years and even squandered the inheritance your father left. Why do you continue to support her? What can I do?" "Jamie, she's still my mom," Paul replied, his voice tinged with resignation. "After hearing for years that she deserves my money, it's hard to shake off. I can't completely cut her off. She's the only family I have left, apart from you." "I understand that," I said gently, "but you need to reconsider your situation. You're drowning in debt. How much longer can you manage this?" Paul didn't have an answer. He realized that continuing to support Sarah meant he could never escape his financial burdens. This situation also made me question our future together. I was aware that Sarah could become a significant issue, potentially claiming a stake in everything we owned. She already disliked me, resentful of the bond Paul and I shared. "Don't think you can take my son and his money," Sarah would snap at me. "I'm his mother and the only one who deserves his things. You're just a gold digger trying to steal my son." "You need to stop relying on Paul," I retorted. "He's an adult, and so are you. You're perfectly capable of taking care of yourself. Shut up, girl. Don't tell me how to live my life. I won't lose my lifestyle for a worthless girl like you. Paul will always be under my control, and I'll make sure of it," she replied sharply. Sarah's harsh words were alarming, but I was determined to stand up for Paul. Unlike him, I had a strong backbone and a flair for subtle revenge, which allowed me to handle Sarah without letting her harm us too deeply. Although I often endured her insults, I found them bearable. As the years passed, both Paul and I finished college. I began working in a studio, and Paul landed an excellent job as a graphic designer. Despite his difficult upbringing, he was a diligent student and achieved considerable success. Nevertheless, Sarah continued to exploit his finances relentlessly. When Paul and I got engaged, Sarah was furious. She accused him of marrying a gold digger and worried aloud about her welfare. "How can you even think of getting married now?" You still need to take care of me. Getting married would be a bad financial decision. Paul, she argued, Mom, I'm already taking care of you, and getting married won't change that, Paul reassured her. But Sarah wasn't convinced. But your wife will take all your money. You'll have nothing left for me. She doesn't earn much, and her mother is no help either. They'll both just become a burden to you. Excuse me, but my mom and I are perfectly capable of managing on our own. We don't need to rely on your son, I interjected calmly, although internally, I seethed at her accusation. I avoided telling her that she was the actual financial burden. I knew it would only ignite a pointless argument, and I preferred to keep the peace. Sarah interpreted my silence as an opportunity to further insult me and my family. My family, valuing respectability, chose not to retaliate against her barbs, preferring not to stoop to arguing with a narcissist. Despite Sarah's attempts to disrupt our wedding plans, Paul handled the situation well. Although it frustrated him, he still couldn't bring himself to completely sever ties with his mother. After our wedding, we settled into our new home. The details of how we acquired the house aren't pertinent right now, but Sarah was livid when she found out. She called me fuming, "So, you've already started messing with my son's money, buying expensive houses without even discussing it with me." "I have no idea what you're talking about, Sarah. Besides, how Paul and I handle our finances is none of your business," I replied, cutting the conversation short. Her resentment was palpable. "You think you can live in a big house while I'm stuck in this small rented apartment? Mark my words, Jamie, you won't enjoy my son's house alone." At the time, I didn't take Sarah's threats seriously. She had a habit of making such dramatic statements, and I had also developed a habit of ignoring her and not giving her the reaction she sought. That was until one day, something alarming happened. While I was at work, my mom called, puzzled and concerned. "Jamie, why is your stuff at my house? Did something happen with Paul?" "What are you talking about, Mom? Nothing has happened between us. How do you know it's my stuff?" "The moving guys told me your name," she explained. This unexpected turn of events hinted at Sarah's deeper meddling, a dark reminder that ignoring her might no longer suffice. When my mom called, she was understandably confused and alarmed. "Jamie, your boxes arrived here with your name and address on them. I've opened a few, and they're filled with your clothes. What's going on? Did the movers say who sent them?" "I think you should come home right away and sort this out," she advised. Taking her advice, I immediately left work and rushed home. As I entered my bedroom, a shocking sight greeted me. My drawers and closet were empty, even my bath products were gone. I was stunned. Descending to the living room, I found Sarah there, wearing a smug expression. "What the hell is going on, Sarah? Why did you touch my stuff and send it to my mom's house?" I demanded, trying to keep my composure. Sarah's response was chilling. "I'm here to set things right. From now on, only the homeowner and his mother will live in this house. A mother always has more rights than a wife. It's unfair for you to live here." "What are you talking about? You're out of your mind." I shot back, my anger rising. "Since the house belongs to my son, only he and I will stay here. You will leave and go to a house that is in your name. So you're saying only the person who owns the house should stay here?" I clarified, trying to understand her twisted logic. "That's exactly what I mean. Now, since I've already sent your stuff away, you can just leave. Don't worry, my son and I will be very happy here," she declared, then turned and went upstairs. I was furious at her audacity, unable to believe she tried to throw me out of my own house. This house was in my name, and I was the rightful occupant. I couldn't let her force me out without taking action, so I made a strategic call and immediately phoned Paul, urging him to come home as quickly as possible. He said he'd be home soon and would reach me in no time. I relayed to my mom when she arrived at our house to check on the situation. We were both deeply unsettled, but I knew we needed to stand our ground and confront this outrageous attempt by Sarah to usurp our home. When Sarah saw my mother, she was visibly flustered. "What the hell, Jan? Why is your mother here? I told you that you and your family can't be here. I've already sent your stuff to your mother's place. Then why is she here?" I countered with a smirk. "Well, You said that from now on only the homeowner and the mother can stay here, so I called my mother and invited her over. This house is owned by my son. You should not be here, Sarah, I said firmly. I demand you to leave as soon as possible, Sarah shot back sharply. I couldn't help but laugh, finding the irony too delicious, and my mother joined in. Though I was angry, the laughter was a welcome relief because I knew what needed to be clarified next. Once we composed ourselves, I turned to Sarah with a calm demeanor. Just for your information, my dear mother-in-law, this house belongs to me, I began, my tone even but firm. Yes, this house is in my name. It was part of my inheritance from my grandfather, who passed away recently. You can't be telling the truth. I don't believe you. This house cannot be yours. I know my son got this house for you. Sarah spluttered, disbelief etched across her face. Just wait till he comes home and shows you your place. I will not tolerate you keeping me away from the house. Sarah's confusion was met with a blunt correction from my mother. She's telling the truth, Sarah. You have some messed up logic about deserving your son's things. Even if the house is Jay's, you shouldn't be so entitled. Jay is Paul's wife and is equally entitled to his assets. I don't take advice from freeloaders, Rebecca, Sarah snapped back. I would suggest you keep your mouth shut. As for Paul, I will stay with him and make sure he divorces Jamie soon. Just a few minutes later, Paul walked through the front door, clearly bewildered by the sight of his mother standing in the middle of our living room and even more puzzled to see my mother. He hadn't expected such a revelation. Mom, how could you? He asked, his voice a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. Sarah, taken aback by Paul's reaction, attempted to defend her actions. Paul, I was just trying to help you. Your wife and her mother are taking advantage of you. You need to reconsider your marriage. I've been telling you not to tolerate her freeloading behavior. Trust me, I can find you a better wife. Mom, I've told you so many times not to interfere in my marriage. Why are you still doing this? Paul's voice was firm, his frustration clear. Sarah's tone escalated as she retorted, I'm standing up for you, Paul. Your wife will drain your finances if you don't end this. That's why I moved into your house. I'm going to stay with you. You need to stop saying it's his house. I interjected firmly, Sarah, I've already told you, this house is mine. If any mother is staying, it will be mine. Paul looked exasperated as Sarah continued her tirade. Look at what your witch wife is saying. I told you she's a gold digger. She's already claiming that this house is hers. Mom, stop insulting Jamie. This is ridiculous, Paul snapped, his patience worn thin. She's right, the house belongs to Jamie. It was part of her inheritance after her grandfather passed away, my mother added, her voice calm yet authoritative. Sarah's face turned ashen as the truth finally seemed to dawn on her. My mother chuckled slightly from the corner, enjoying Sarah's discomfort, while Paul looked like he hadn't expected such a revelation, was visibly shaken by the confrontation, but I knew we needed to address it together. I took Paul's hands in mine, looking into his eyes with a mix of compassion and determination. Paul, we need to talk about what just happened, I said softly. I understand that this is difficult for you, but we can't let Sarah continue to manipulate and disrupt our lives like this. Paul nodded, his expression reflecting a mix of emotions. I know, Jamie. I'm sorry for everything she's put us through, he said, his voice heavy with regret. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I squeezed his hands, reassuringly. We'll figure this out together, I assured him. But first, we need to establish some boundaries with Sarah. We can't allow her to continue intruding into our marriage and causing us such distress. Paul nodded in agreement, his resolve firming. You're right, Jamie. From now on, we need to stand united and put an end to Sarah's interference once and for all. With a shared sense of determination, we began to outline a plan to assert our boundaries with Sarah and protect our marriage from further disruptions. It wouldn't be easy, but together, we knew we could overcome any challenges that lay ahead. Paul's resolve remained firm as he addressed his mother's outburst. I'm sorry, Mom, but you've crossed a line. Your behavior has been unacceptable, and we can't continue to tolerate it. We've made our decision, and we're sticking to it. Sarah's protests grew louder, but we remained resolute in our stance. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but we can't let you in," I reiterated, my voice unwavering. "You need to leave now." With tears streaming down her face, Sarah finally relented, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Fine," she muttered bitterly before turning and walking away. As the door closed behind her, Paul and I shared a moment of relief. It was a difficult decision to make, but we knew it was the right one for our well-being and our marriage. We spent the rest of the evening comforting each other, grateful to have each other's support in facing this challenging situation. In the days that followed, we focused on rebuilding our lives without Sarah's toxic influence. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, we grew stronger as a couple. And as we moved forward, we vowed to never let anyone come between us again. As the situation escalated, it became quite embarrassing. At one point, a neighbor approached our front door, concerned by Sarah's tirade. When she lunged at him and shouted, he didn't hesitate to dial 911 and let the police listen to what was happening. My mother-in-law continued her tirade until the police arrived and arrested her. This unfortunate spectacle provided us with the necessary evidence to secure a restraining order, especially given that Sarah had also been harassing my mother. Paul suggested a surprising solution. "Jamie, I think we should let your mom stay with us for a while," he proposed. "Sarah knows her address and won't stop harassing her. She's becoming increasingly unhinged, and I'm worried she might escalate her behavior. It would be safest if Rebecca stayed here." "Are you sure about this, Paul? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable with her living here, and I don't think Mom would want to impose," I responded, concerned about the dynamics. "I feel bad for Rebecca, and it's the right thing to do. I don't mind at all. It's better for everyone's peace of mind if she stays with us for now," Paul reassured me. "I know Rebecca is a reasonable person, Jamie. I'd have no problem with her staying here. She's very respectful of our boundaries. Besides, only the homeowner and her mother can stay here, right?" That joke between us brought out a hearty laugh, lightening the mood despite the circumstances. While Paul was earnestly trying to distance himself from Sarah's toxic influence, he was still struggling with the fallout from his mother's actions. Cutting ties with a narcissistic parent is a complex and painful process. We've been discussing therapy for Paul to help him navigate these emotional waters. He's open to the idea but needs some time to organize his thoughts. Understanding his mental state, I'm doing my best to support him. Meanwhile, Sarah, cut off from directly contacting us, has been trying to appeal to my mom, Rebecca, to garner sympathy. She laments about how unfairly she's been treated, claiming she has nowhere to go and is now living in her car. Over the years, Sarah has alienated so many people that no one is willing to take her in. Paul remains firm in his decision not to support her financially anymore, forcing Sarah to face the reality of finding a job. An idea that terrifies her, especially with several police reports and an arrest on her record. We've reached a point where we are indifferent to her plight. I can candidly say that I am relieved to see Sarah facing the consequences of her actions. This tough love is long overdue, and while it's harsh, it's necessary for our peace and to finally bring some sanity back into our lives. Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments. We'll see you on the Retaliation Realm channel.